There we go. Because a lot of this was covered. Damien Walter with the Corps of Engineers, covering kind of the Northwest, in the Erdic Engineering Research Development Center. Dr. Matson, was glad he's on. He covered a good portion of mine. I defer to him. He's been the one who's taught me things. I call him the guru. Um, so was asked to present on extent. Uh, I'll skip to that slide. Basically, the distribution across the U.S. I'll touch a little bit on rough estimated extent of it, and presentation of some materials which you've heard about Eurasian water milfoil, native water milfoils, and the hybrids and the issues those occur. All this is information that's out there on the web, so folks can Google and search. A little bit, you got this. I missed some of the beginning. Sorry, due to my difficulties getting connected. But introduced in the 1940s. Smersh, you heard from Dr. Matson about the impact on reservoirs, flowing systems, and then you've heard, from other presenters about the hybridization with northern and how that can compound. So when I think of extent, you can think of it in a couple of different ways. Actually, as to you saw Dr. Matson's global map, but this is for med maps as to by counties. So you all for Bear Lake, and you saw this in an earlier presentation. You're based at this location here. So quite widespread. Also USGS colleagues there have really good as to when you start thinking of, the presence and densities, number of detections. Again, Bear Lake is in this location. So as you zoom in, you'll get to, close proximity. So that extent is across the U.S. But some areas, if you want to say you have greater presence, and then even based on your location, your density of it. Again, just a closer zoom in, your detections here. Whenever I'm thinking of extent, and I'll talk about this more later on, is your location, but then also that location relationship to what's around you. So a lot of times out here, we think of it as the hydraulic unit, a huck. So for you all, if you think about it, where you've got a couple, presence detections, that whole watershed, then you can have the spread, presence of it. And so that whole watershed, that whole huck basically you have potential for extent of impact in area. But then even what is around, if you can see my arrow, anything that is around that area, because like we've heard, it's spread by boats, vessels, and everything, various means. So that can increase that impact or that extent of the area it's going to affect. I'm not going to touch on this. Dr. Matson does a much better job. His presentation, I will say I think it was 2017, 2018, kind of teach me visually in the field, differences and stuff. I think it was probably like carving it in stone to get it through my thick skull, and memorizing it. I always have to refer back to a guide. But I think the big part I want to mention here is we've heard about the hybridization. So if we go back and you think of the hybridization where you have northern presence, and that variability, your basic extent of where the range they can be, where it can spread to, where it can take place and occur, just compounds. So that becomes a big issue when thinking of AIS and each of the species you're dealing with. This basically, hopefully my link will work. This is a map. So you saw the list that Dr. Matson provided of a lot of the native species. So this is a resource that's out there.
To reshare your screen with the map that comes up on your browser.
Interesting. Okay. Let me do that.
Stop your share and then reshare the map.
I will do that.
And then you'll have to stop and share your slides again.
Did it go?
Yep, it's up.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a web link out there that basically for the different species, you can see all the species combined, but basically your native northwestern, you can see its range. So when you think of that with all the other, with milfoils or hybridization, like we said, between Eurasian water milfoil and northern, this all becomes a conducive range, or even, like I said, with genetic variability. So that's a resource out there to be in the presentation. So it gives you an idea, like you said, Dr. Matson's map showed water milfoil, the various species all over. So I will stop and then go back to my presentation. Let's start it over again. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. Um, you heard in the identification, I won't touch on this now, but basically the number of segments, and then when you get hybrids, uh, these are resources that are in Montana's field guide, which is a great resource. And one of the things I wanted to present here is that, people are starting to become more aware of AIS, which I'm really glad to see the folks that are attending this, because I think as in the past, and I'll admit when I started my career in the 90s, wasn't dealing with it too much, but as it's become more relevant, I always like to point to this one chart. As people are looking for it more, we find it more. It's really helpful knowing where uh, species are and how to deal with it. And then basically for aquatic plants, there is, as you saw in the south, different time frames that it grows versus in the north, different geographic regions and ranges. So I'll get to, probably the meat and potatoes that I want to present here is that your location can, depending on how you're thinking of extent, your location means a lot. And a couple means as to, what is the stage of that infestation where you're at, what's around you. Also, like we run into, you may have this, I don't know if you do or not. I'm sorry, I missed the earlier presentations, but out where I'm at in southeastern Washington, we have some underwaters. So the location of how to deal with milfoil can become compounded based on endangered species presence, drinking water, permits that you need, historic preservation, those types of things. So that extent of impact, where you're at, may dictate how you manage or how you deal with something, or how you're able to, and what all you need in place. Also, then stage of infestation, whether it's new area, new locations, or it's established, or it's well and heavily infested, and then what's your overall mission and goal of what you want to achieve or what you're trying to do. So with that, I think I got back a little bit of time, and I thank everybody else who covered a lot of my content.